Why is Pat Freiermuth one of the top waiver wire targets this week? And how about those rookie wide receivers giving you more options? And should you pick up Jordan Love and Kenny Pickett? We break it down as we look at the Week 13 waiver wire, only on this edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com. We're Locked On Fantasy Football, your destination to become the smartest fantasy football player league. Part of Locked On Network, your team every day, your fantasy football team every day. We're going to help your fantasy football team by looking at the waiver wire, and we're going to do a mixed bag here. Look at the targets that we're going to prioritize above the rest. Then look at some streamers that you can look at for 1 week at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, and defense with 6 teams on bye this week. Yep, that's a lot of teams, including notables, the Bills and Bears and Ravens. So we need some extra quarterbacks there with no Josh Allen and Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson. And then we have 3 more teams as well that are hurting us. The Raiders and Giants also not available to us in that mix, as well as the Vikings. So a lot of players that you might be looking to replace, and we'll give you some ideas for those, as well as stashes you can make here for the stretch run into the fantasy football playoffs. I'm flying solo today. My co-host, Michelle, is a little bit under the weather, so get well, Michelle. We'll see you soon here on the show, but we've compiled some good waiver wire information for you. We'll dive into that here quickly. First, I got to tell you, this episode is brought to you by downloading the Game Time app. Create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. That you'll find all that at Game Time. A little bit more about them later in the show. All right, let's dive right into the waiver wire and the picks here for this week. Highest priority for me, I think you have to look at tight end Pat Freiermuth. This guy came on. He had 120 yards receiving there against the Bengals. They hadn't been throwing to the middle of the field previously. The Steelers with Matt Canada, they fire Matt Canada. They go over 400 yards of offense. Comfortable to get Patty F involved, fully healed from the hamstring. So he looks like a really good asset down the stretch. I mean, anytime a receiver that's a tight end goes for 100 yards, you got to pay attention. It's a pretty good matchup this week against the Cardinals. Cardinals just allowed Tyler Higbee to come out of nowhere, having done nothing for multiple weeks, to score 2 touchdowns. So Cardinals have been better overall against the tight end this week, but I don't think Pat Freiermuth is going anywhere as a key target for Kenny Pickett. I think they'll warm up a little bit of George Pickens as well this week, and Deontay Johnson, kind of underwhelming a little bit, also helps Freiermuth's value here. So love it here this week. And then Roschon Johnson, we wanted to see what his role was behind Khalil Herbert with no Donta Foreman on Monday night. It was hard, right? We only had 4 field goals from the Bears, so it wasn't exciting. They were able to win the game with those 4 field goals. But Roschon definitely dominated the touches. Khalil Herbert was not effective. Again, Roschon was a good pass protector early in the season, getting more run as a receiver, very, very much involved in a lot of short passes from Fields. So it is a bye week, so we can't go nuts with Roschon Johnson and have him available to us this week. But, man, it is a good spot here for him going forward as potentially taking over his backfield. We'll see if Foreman heals up, but Johnson, they wanted to get more touches too, and that definitely happened now. Keaton Mitchell will also have to wait on. Don't forget about him during the bye if he's still available in your leagues. Definitely a snap share bump up with each successive week here for the Ravens. So he could be taking over this backfield, has a bye, gets rested, gets a little bit more acclimated to this offense as a rookie. Remember, he had an injury early in the season that kept him out of action. So Mitchell is only going to get better, and they're going to keep him riding him down the stretch here as they try to make the playoffs as a top seed. Now, Jordan Love is a quarterback that I would look at not necessarily as a streamer this week. You could have better options. He's playing the Chiefs at home. It's not the easiest matchup, but Love's starting to compile some numbers. He's now a QB1 in terms of top 12 scoring for the season as a QB10. So he's right there where we thought he could be with some upside with those young receivers. So look, it still could happen this week. Patrick Mahomes is in town there. It's a Sunday night game. He's playing well. The weapons are really coming through for him. And those weapons include Jayden Reed, who has kind of taken over here as the number one target in the middle of the field for Jordan Love, and he's opened things up. He's pretty much involved when they need scoring situations. He's used all over the field, in the middle, working in the slot, and getting open when needed there, and as well as getting some run in the running game. We'll see if Aaron Jones returns here, but Reed could be used like that to throw a couple wrinkles at the Chiefs. And the Chiefs actually have improved themselves on the outside coverage, but a little bit weak in the middle of the field. So I'm going to fade Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs in the wide receiver rankings, but Jayden Reed alive and well. Now, Jalin Hyatt is another guy that's coming on as a rookie, big play receiver for the Giants. Again, you'll have to wait for him, but you think I have a 100-yard game with Tommy DeVito, they'll look to get the rookie more involved out of the stretch, try to develop him a little bit more with the season out of reach for anything of note in the playoffs. So expect more of Jalin Hyatt. Expect more of Jonathan Mingo as well for the Panthers. He was involved as their leading receiver. I also do like his work here opposite Adam Thielen. So Thielen was kind of limited, right? He only had one catch. He was not involved as much as we thought. We have a new but old play caller here in Thomas Brown with the firing of Frank Reich. So Mingo, youth movement could be in full force here. We know the Buccaneers secondary really hurting this year. So that gives Mingo a chance to be a decent wide receiver 3 for you if you need him this week in PPR leaning leagues. All right, that's a look at the priorities here on the waiver wire. We will get into the streaming options there that you can look at as 1 week plays that you can consider based on the matchups this week. We're also going to check on the injuries to make sure these guys are healthy and available. But yeah, some good options at quarterback and wide receiver. Run those down next. And then I'm going to look at wide receiver, tight end, and streaming defense in our last segment. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit more about game time. We told you at the top, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by Game Time. And look, the Game Time app is so amazing. If you're looking to get to an event in the last minute, whether it's a sporting match or a concert, Game Time is going to take care of you to find the best deals near you so you can get to the stadium to check out the concert or the game in the right way with the right price. And Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You get last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals that you can take advantage of. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. And you can check out all the views from every seat in the venue. You can also expect the lowest price guaranteed, events cancellation protection, job loss protection, all that good stuff that you need when you're buying tickets. So it's easy to get in on Game Time. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's continue to look at the waiver wire. Now we're going to focus on streamers at quarterback and wide receiver that you can look at this week. Again, flying solo today. Michelle, get better. This is Vinnie Iyer here for Locked On Fantasy Football. So let's keep going with the momentum here that we have with these fine pickups of the week. We have Russell Wilson, and looking at him, look, he's still available in about half the leagues. It wasn't a great matchup last week. We faded him properly against the Browns, but this week the Texans showing a little bit more signs of allowing things, especially in the middle of the field. You figure there's going to be some high volume opposite C.J. Stroud this week. So Russell Wilson is a very good play if you need him. Again, he can run around, take advantage of the middle of field openings. This is a really good spot for him. He can use his backs, tight ends, and Jerry Jeudy in the slot to put up some numbers this week against that Texans zone defense. So I like it this week. Again, he should be putting the ball up quite a bit in what should be a sneaky high-scoring game once again, much like the Jaguars-Texans was with Trevor Lawrence and Stroud last week. Now, you can look at Gardner Minshew. Now, it's a bit risky. Again, Tennessee has been pretty weak against the pass, but we know Bryce Young didn't come through, right? And Gardner Minshew, the one thing that gives him a little bit of hope is that Jonathan Taylor is banged up, so they might have to put the ball a little bit in the air. Titans offense could also do some damage here against the Colts, especially against the run. So something to look at there with Gardner Minshew. If you're really hurting there, I think you're in a direction. But one guy I actually like a little bit more, And Michelle has seen signs of his play improving here for her Steelers. That's Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett gets the Cardinals at home. This is his best matchup, essentially, since he got the Raiders on the road. And yes, he put up a multiple touchdown game. And I think it comes here. I think he throws a touchdown to Pat Freiermuth. I think he connects with George Pickens on a long touchdown and maybe even gets a dump off third touchdown to either Najee Harris or Jalen Warren, most likely the latter back here. But yeah, there are avenues for Pickett to put up a couple scores in this game against the Cardinals. That's how bad they were. Look, Matthew Stafford was doing absolutely nothing in fantasy. Then he revives, throwing a couple tight end passes in the end zone as well as to Kyron Williams. So look, if it can revive Matthew Stafford, who was pretty much dead in fantasy football this season, then you can really feel good about Kenny Pickett. So again, you have a lot of quarterbacks off. That's Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Justin Fields. If you're trying to play Josh Dobbs, he's not available. So that's 4 quarterbacks right there. So you might extend a little bit of this position, especially if you're in Superflex where you have to start 2 QBs. You're going to dig definitely a lot deeper this week. And Pickett should be probably playing in most leagues of that nature for sure in week 13. Now, let's flip over to wide receiver. And these are some guys that you can look at that have some real nice value if they can be on the field this week. Demario Douglas is someone you have to play, I think, as a wide receiver 3 in PPR leading leagues, half point and full point here. We'll see about the concussion. He needs to be cleared to play here. He has a few days to clear the protocol. If it's Bailey Zappi, you feel better about him because it's slightly better quarterback play at this stage in relation to Mac Jones. It is the Chargers' easiest matchup, not only for wide receivers in the league, but particularly slot receivers with Jasir Taylor and Douglas being a little guy. If not, you can look and see how they're going to distribute the ball to Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster maybe getting a little bit more run if Douglas is not in the mix. Now, Greg Dortch you can look at as well. He's got more involved. We'll see if Michael Wilson is out for another week. I would say Dortch over Rondell Moore in this particular matchup. Moore is more of the big play shot guy here. They need somebody a little bit more consistent to play off what they get from Marquise Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown could see a little bit of Joey Porter Jr., not the easiest matchup. Dortch could find himself in an easier spot to produce with volume. So another half-point, full-point PPR type play in Greg Dortch. Curtis Samuel proved to be a little bit more than a PPR play last week, hitting exactly 100 yards against the Cowboys, and it's another good matchup against the Dolphins. Kader Kahu, the beatable guy in the slot. They're throwing a lot more to the wide receivers. We know there's going to be high volume. There always is high volume with Sam Howell, but particularly high volume this week with Tua Tagovailoa on the other side. Now, Cedric Tillman, I don't know if I would go right in and play him, but he's starting to look like the Browns' best receiver. And Amari Cooper stays hurt here. Watch out. I mean, it's been the David Njoku show quite a bit with these younger quarterbacks. You could have Joe Flacco being in there this week. I don't love the matchup against the Rams this week. He's a rookie trying to figure things out. It's kind of interesting that Tillman, Jalin Hyatt were kind of side by side at Tennessee last year with Hendon Hooker. And we weren't sure who was going to be the better pro. Now they could both end up being really good players here in different respects. I think Tillman is more of a complete type receiver that may not have as much suddenness, speed, quickness to stretch the field. Hyatt is more of that speed guy. So Tillman, they've kind of needed that type of player, and he still has potential to be their top receiver at some point as Amari Cooper gets a little bit older for Cleveland. So he's a guy that we're going to look a lot in Dynasty and Keeper Leagues. And the final guy that I'll talk about in this segment, looking at the streaming wide receivers that you could play or someone that you could pop in there if you're hurting at wide receiver 3 or just a stash for the stretch, Zay Jones. He's not got a lot of volume. He's helped with Calvin Ridley. But again, this Bengals secondary is a little bit beat up with Cam Taylor, Britt hurting. So maybe an opportunity to unlock all these weapons here. And Zay Jones has seen some key high leverage red zone looks as well. So that could be his value this week. So something to keep in mind here as we examine some wide receivers out there that you can put in as 1 week claims to play. So sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes we have to look longer term, just determine how good your team is. If you can afford a loss or you feel good about some of the depth you have, then you can start looking at those stashes for later weeks. If you need just guys to play now, these are the guys to target there across quarterback and wide receiver. We will get into running backs, tight ends, and defenses in our final segment here on Locked On Fantasy Football. But first, we got to hear from another one of our fantastic sponsors. So check them out and get in on FanDuel. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook as well. Check out FanDuel for some really good offers this time of the year to get in on some special betting combination. The weather is getting colder. The NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get into the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that you can check out at FanDuel, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. And they're not just for the NFL, for other sports, but we're running out of time. The regular season for the NFL, just 6 weeks left. So we're time to get on it, especially with that special offer of the bonus bets, $150 in bonus bets with any winning money line bet of at least $5. So check that out. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL to kick off the stretch run and December here coming in the 2023 NFL season. All right, it is time to close the show and look at some more streaming options that are available to us here at different positions to help during this bye week. Running back, tight end, defense is the focus. Yeah, a lot of fantasy running backs off, even more so than the quarterbacks. We lose a couple Ravens backs, no Gus Edwards or Keaton Mitchell, as we mentioned, no James Cook there, no Saquon Barkley, no Josh Jacobs, no Khalil Herbert, no Roschon Johnson. And then, yeah, some of us are going to miss the Vikings combination of Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler. Now, Zack Moss looks like he can pop up as an option, and he's the highest priority now that you look at. If you don't have him handcuffing Jonathan Taylor with the thumb injury, the questionable status here for the Titans, Zack Moss is number one. Zack Moss absolutely destroyed the Titans in the first matchup, so he's familiar with them. The Titans haven't been the same stout run defense they were very early in the season, so Zack Moss clearly would be the smash play here this week, filling in for Jonathan Taylor this week. Looking at Antonio Gibson, look, Brian Robinson Jr. hasn't been all that effective. The game script here should be negative. You figure Gibson can be involved. This is for desperation play only, but again, if you're looking for a flex play that can do something, this is one to watch. Samaje Perine, I mean, go figure, he's the guy that gets the rushing touchdown here, as well as Jaleel McLaughlin. Javonte Williams is still looking to score in that way. So they've used Perine a little bit more as a receiver, right? And he's very effective in that role. You can play off Williams pretty well. He's available there if you want to play him in there. If you really get weird and you get stuck, you could play him with Javonte Williams there and hope for some PPR magic there with them catching passes and what could be a negative game script, or at least even there against the Texans. So 3 guys to think about there, really, if you're hurting at wide receiver. Now you look at tight ends, look at what we don't have this week. A lot is missing. We know Mark Andrews is already down for the season, but he might have been plug and play Isaiah Likely, TJ Hawkinson, Dalton Kincaid were top 5 consistent options here. So definitely missing some pop of the position. And you might have been looking at Daniel Bellinger. You might have not had Darren Waller. You might have tried to play Cole Kmet. But 2 best options this week. Juwan Johnson, he's going to get it done here. Look, they're hurting at wide receiver for sure. Michael Thomas is on IR. You have some questions about Rashid Shaheed with his thigh injury. And then we know that Chris Olave is in the concussion protocol. So Juwan Johnson may need to be, by default, a big target here. Remember, he's a bit of a hybrid wide receiver. We'd love him with Jameis Winston in there, but even with Derek Carr, I think he's the best way to throw and have usage against the Lions, who do give it up to the tight end, including to Tucker Kraft last week. And we know Luke Musgrave has been placed on IR with a scary stomach abdomen issue there. So now the other rookie tight end gets a shot here, Tucker Kraft. He found the end zone on a short pass from Jordan Love against the Lions. The Chiefs can give it up to the tight end. We saw a little bit of run from another rookie, Michael Mayer, from the Raiders last week against them. But again, if you're really hurting and you were looking at Musgrave as a play, you can go there with Tucker Kraft this week. I think he's a better option than like forcing yourself into a Tanner Hudson or Chiga Conquo or even a Hunter Henry this week. That's more where I would go at tight end if you're really desperate and you're missing one of those guys and you just need a 1 weeker. And definitely if you've got Hawkins or Kincaid, you could be in that situation. All right, let us close here looking at our streaming defenses. There are a lot of good defenses this week. I like the Titans or the Colts this week. They're in the same game. Titans played really well last week against the Panthers coming on. Minshew can have mistakes. We also know on the other side, Will Levis can have some mistakes. So I also love the Rams this week. Aaron Donald looked like a beast again. And he's going to be fired up. You have Myles Garrett potentially in the same building playing hurt. They're in Los Angeles. So Love it at home. We'll see. Even if it's Joe Flacco, you get a statue back there to go after. And this Browns offensive line, not the same when Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin are down. So there's some ways to get after the quarterback there. So sacks, potential takeaways there in that matchup as the Rams are favored. I also like the Bengals at home. Or sorry, I should say the Jaguars at home against the Bengals. Getting a little ahead there, but no, I do not like the Bengals this week. They're on the road in Jacksonville. I do love the Jaguars. And the flip side of that, primetime emotional night game bump there. I'm not feeling that for the Packers and their matchup against the Chiefs, but definitely you can look at that for the Jaguars this week. The Cowboys already are going to smash it in their primetime matchup against the Seahawks on Thursday. Then either side of that Jets-Falcons game. Look, it's still Desmond Ridder on the road. He can make some plays there with the Jets, and they're going to force them to some mistakes here for sure with their pressure and coverage. And then the other side of it, look, the Falcons going after the Jets. Tim Boyle still limited here. He can make some big mistakes here. So Falcons also came through with a pick 6 against the Saints in Derek Carr last week. So some good streaming options all across the board that you can look at to whatever position you're looking at. But defense, there's 6 options right there that you can look at. Rams and Jaguars stand out, but Colts, Titans, either one of those teams, and the Falcons, Jets as well. So there you have it. There's a look at the waiver wire. Not too much out there that we haven't uncovered as much as we can for longer-term production, but short-term, we still need a little bit of help and a little bit of depth here as we try to finish out the fantasy football season in style here. So looking forward to all those good pickups here that you can check out. And again, we will come back and look at our quarterback and running back rankings. That's right. We'll look at that for week 13. So see where some of these waiver wire guys fit. These streamers kind of fit in relation to some of the more regular plays that you might look at, or what guys that you normally would play that we want to fade tomorrow. So we'll look at all that here on the next show here in Locked On Fantasy Football. Programming reminder, Locked On has launched its first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. Local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. For Locked On Fantasy Football, and get well, Michelle, get out there. This has been Vinnie Iyer. Thanks again for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We'll check you out tomorrow with our look at our quarterback and running back rankings.